Hey bag maker, today I'm going to be talking about the Juki TL18QVP sewing machine. I love this sewing machine and it's got some new features that are really helpful, especially for bag making. Okay, I'm going to show you some of the features of the machine, also some of the accessories that came with it, and how to do some basic functions such as threading the bobbin and getting the machine set up to sew. So the machine comes with this table and it has little risers on the bottom so you can adjust it either higher or lower. I don't usually use mine, but it sure would be handy for things like machine quilting. So I'm just going to go ahead and slide this off and put it to the side. It also comes with a cover for your sewing machine, and the cover has an opening for the handle so you can still carry the machine with the cover on it. And there's also a knee lift. So if you're not familiar with a knee lift is really handy for when you want to lower or lift the presser foot without using your hands, such as if you're sewing through a curve. It's handy because you can just take your knee and slide it up against this and it will help with that presser foot. And this just installs by sliding in that opening right there. So this is the knee lift. Okay, so let me show you, there's just a minimal amount of knobs and buttons on the machine, but let me show you what they all do. So there's this lever at the bottom. If it's pointing to the right, that's for regular sewing, and if you're pointing it to the little graphic on the left, that's for your free motion quilting. So I usually leave mine in this setting since I'm working on bags. This lever over here is for a back stitch, so while you're sewing, if you hold this down for a few stitches, it will perform that back stitch function. Really important for locking your stitches at the start and end of the seams. This button, if you push this, it will lower the needle, and then this button with the scissors will cut the thread, which is super handy. If you'd like to cut the thread, you can either use this button here or on your pedal. If you push up like that, that's for sewing, and if you push your heel down on the back of this will cut the thread. So either one, you can either hit the button or this. There's actually an accessory that comes with the machine because sometimes people accidentally cut the thread when they don't mean to and they don't like that function. So if you'd like to get rid of that function, there's this little black rubber piece that came in the kit with the sewing machine. All you need to do is slide that on the back, and then when you go to use the pedal, it won't push down and cut the thread. Okay, so some of the other dials over here, this is your stitch length. On my machine, when I'm making bags, I'm usually using a 2.5 millimeter stitch length. And then for top stitching, I'll usually use 3 millimeter stitch length. And then for basting stitch, such as when attaching fabric to the foam interfacing, I use 4 millimeter stitch length. Again, your stitch length might be your own personal preference. You might have a different stitch length, and that's completely fine. There's this little lever over here on the side with a little picture of a rabbit, and then at the bottom a picture of a turtle. This is your speed for stitching. So you can either go slower, faster. I usually have it set right in the middle. And then on the side of the machine is the on-off button. So that light will turn on when you're ready to sew. And let me go ahead and turn that off for just a second. The two cords just plug into the side of the machine, and if you need to hand crank, you'll just turn this dial. Okay, so let's move on to how to thread the machine. So there's sort of a telescoping thread holder over here, so it goes up quite a bit. Normally I have it set a little bit higher, but I'm going to have it set down low so you can still see it in the camera view. So to thread a bobbin, I'm going to grab an empty bobbin right here, and then I've got my spool of Aurifil thread. So I'm just going to go ahead and set that right over here on the left, and you probably can't see it from the shot, but there's a bit of foam on the base over here. The foam helps so that the thread is not moving while it's sitting on the thread holder. Okay, so I'm going to set the thread through here, and then I'm just going to go ahead and lift it because it's a little bit low for my preference. And then I'm just going to go ahead and sort of crisscross the thread over here, and then I'm going to insert the end of the thread. There's a little opening at the top of the bobbin, and I'm just going to go ahead and insert that right there. All right, so I'm going to slide the bobbin on here, and I'm going to twist it till it just drops just a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and push this piece of metal in toward the bobbin, and that will hold the bobbin in place. So I'm going to hold the thread just until it gets started. I'm going to hit the pedal, and then once it gets going, I'm going to start threading the bobbin. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut that off. Okay, so to thread the top thread, again, I've got my spool sitting up here, and I'm going to go ahead and set it in this thread holder, and then I'm just going to go ahead and raise it a little bit. Okay, there's a piece of metal here with 3 holes. I'm going to go ahead and insert it coming down through the first hole, and then I'm going to bring it up and come down through the third hole over here. There's a little disc at the top, and I'm going to go ahead and set that thread in the middle of the disc, and then there's an additional disc down here with numbers on it, and then it's going to slide through there. There's a little wire over here, and it's just going to wrap around, come down through here, up through here, and then one more section over here. And this is all illustrated in the manual for your sewing machine. I'm going to bring it down here. I'm going to wrap the thread around the back, make sure the needle is in the highest position, and then push down this little white button. And then if you wrap your thread around, it will thread your thread for you. Okay, so to thread your bobbin, go ahead and open this little side door. And here's your bobbin holder over here. I'm going to go ahead and slide the bobbin inside. And then I'm going to wrap it through. There's a little opening on the top of the bobbin case. And then I'm just going to pull a couple of inches of thread out. So it's just going to go ahead and slide in the side of the sewing machine, and then I'm going to close the door. Okay, so I wanted to talk about a couple of extra features that the TL18QVP has that my other Jukis do not. So I also have a Juki QVP 2200 Mini and also a Juki TL2010Q. So these machines visually look just about the same, they sew about the same, and they're all made of metal, which is really nice. I've used less expensive plastic sewing machines in the past, and you'll definitely notice the difference with an all metal sewing machine because this metal sewing machine won't budge. While you're sewing, especially sewing through thick layers, the machine won't be jostling around on your tabletop, whereas a plastic machine, especially a lighter weight one, might be moving around while you're sewing. So I really like that. There's 3 major new features in the TL18QVP. So there's a little disc over here with 2 openings, and this little disc is called the attachment fixing plate. And the purpose of this little plate here is for mounting fabric guides and other attachments. Another feature of this sewing machine, there's a little button near the back, and if you hit the button, it turns the light on. If you hit it a second time, it dims the light a little bit. If you hit it a third time, it dims it even more, and then if you hit it a 4th time, it turns the light off. So that's really great to be able to adjust the LED light on the sewing machine. And my favorite feature of this machine is actually the micro lifter. So there's a little knob at the top of the machine, and this is the micro lifter. What it does is the height of the presser foot can be adjusted by turning the knob. So there's 3 different adjustments. So if the knob is all the way turned down, flush against the base, that's your regular sewing. If you twist it up until you can see a little black dot, and the little black dot will be lined up with, there's a little dash on the base. So that's your first level of height adjustment, and to get to the highest level, you'll just turn this knob all the way up until you can see a red line. And that's the highest level. So the purpose of the micro lifter is for sewing thick seams or variances in seams. So you're probably familiar with top stitching the top edge of a bag, where you have on the sides a seam which is obviously thicker than the rest of the area that you're top stitching. So by using that micro lifter, it sort of compensates for that change in thickness, and it allows the presser foot, looks like I need to tighten my presser foot a little bit, but it allows that presser foot to continuously sew and make that adjustment when you're going to different levels, such as top stitching a seam. So I wanted to share with you kind of what this machine does with layers. I've done this demonstration in the past with lots of different layers on my other two Jukis, so I wanted to do this as well on the TL18QVP. So I've got here 4 layers of foam interfacing. This is by Annie Soft and Stable, and I've also got 4 layers of cork fabric here. So I'm sort of going to stagger those 8 layers so that I can show you how that micro lifter works. Okay, so as you can see, the layers are staggered just to kind of simulate the different thicknesses when going from top stitching to when you arrive at the side seams. And I've got my stitch length set at, it is very thick, but I'm going to go ahead and slide this underneath my presser foot just so that you can see that it can handle a lot of layers. Normally I'm not making a bag with this many layers, but I wanted to share with you that it can actually manage it. So I'm going to lower that presser foot, and then I'm just going to start sewing. As you can see, it is quite thick, but the machine is still going over the seams. And let's continue on. There we go. I do have the micro lifter in place. All right, and I'll show you this on the close-up camera in just a second, but the stitches are pretty even, especially going over the thinner layers where there's less cork fabric and less foam interfacing. So the micro lifter does an excellent job. And again, I'm just going to go ahead and twist it down to its normal setting. But again, there's 3 different settings for this micro lifter. And I think this is a fabulous feature to add to a sewing machine, because generally we're dealing with lots of different layers for bag making. Okay, so this is all those layers of cork and foam interfacing that I sewed together. So it did a really good job with that. And now I wanted to share with you all of the items that came with the sewing machine. So I already showed you this black rubber piece for deactivating the thread cutter and the foot pedal. This screwdriver over here for when you need to change your needle or your presser foot out. This you can slide on top of your thread spool so that it holds your thread in place, or if you're using a shorter spool, it will help with that as well. Sewing machine oil, this will last you quite a while. There was a little packet of needles in with the machine, as well as a few empty bobbins. Okay, so there's a lot of feet that come with this machine. So I'm going to walk you through all of the feet really quickly, and then I'm going to show you 2 feet that did not come with the machine, but that I use all the time on my sewing machine. So this is the walking foot for the Juki. This is the zipper foot. So this you can move from side to side depending on the location of your zipper. If you need the foot, the little metal piece, to be on the right side or the left side. I prefer a different zipper foot, so I'll show you that one right now. So this is the zipper foot that came with the machine. This foot did not come with the machine, but I purchased it separately, and it's called the Juki hinge zipper foot. So this foot is really narrow. It looks like the foot I use all the time, except for it being less wide. And the reason I like this foot better is because with this piece of metal, it's a little bit awkward getting a good grip, especially if you're near the edge of the zipper or near the edge of the fabric. Because the hinge zipper foot is so narrow, it handles installing the zippers, in my opinion, a lot better. I completely love this foot, and I just replaced the zipper foot that came with the machine for this one instead. Again, this is the hinged zipper foot. So to go along with the walking foot, there's some guides that you can set up. So you would use these in conjunction with the walking foot, and these guides are for having different spacing. So when you're doing, for instance, machine quilting, especially if you're doing straight line quilting, you can have it spaced out to your preference, how far apart you want the stitches to be. So those pieces come and can be used in conjunction with the walking foot. Okay, a few other extra accessories, and then there's some more feet. So there's 3 free motion feet if you like to do your own quilting. So this one right here, and there's 2 others. So this is an open-toed foot. And then here's another foot. So there's lots of options. If you're using acrylic rulers for your quilting, you can use this one, but there's 3 free motion feet. This one, let me cut this out of the package. This is a compensating foot, and what the compensating foot does, especially with thicker layers of fabric, it has this nice little edge over here, and when sewing on your sewing machine, this will help you line up. This is actually a 1/4 of an inch. This will help you get a nice 1/4 of an inch. This one right here is a guide. It's also got the 1/4 inch. It's sort of a thinner blade over here. And then the last foot that comes with the machine is the hemming foot. So this will just roll your fabric over and then give you a nice hem if you're working on a project that requires a hem. So one more foot that did not come with this sewing machine that I use all the time is a Teflon foot. So this is the Teflon foot that I use with my sewing machine, and what the Teflon foot does is it allows the foot, because this is not made of metal, it's made of, it looks like white plastic, but it's Teflon. It allows the foot to slide over fabrics that might be sticky. So if you're working with clear vinyl, leather, sometimes cork fabric, other vinyls, marine vinyl, it allows the foot to slide over the fabric nicely. So for that function, you can either use a Teflon foot or you can use a walking foot. Either of those will accomplish sewing over those types of fabrics. I like using the Teflon foot so I have more of a viewable area, and it's more similar to the feet that I commonly use on my sewing machine for sewing bags. Okay, and this is the foot that I use all the time. This did come in the set of feet and tools with the sewing machine, and this is what the foot looks like. It measures a scant 1/4 of an inch, so it's really good for sewing quilt blocks. I use it for bag making, and there's also measurements on the bed of the sewing machine with different commonly used measurements that you might use, such as 1/4 of an inch, 5/8 of an inch. That's all marked on the bed of the sewing machine. I hope you enjoyed that look at the Juki TL18QVP sewing machine. If you already own either the Juki TL2010Q or the Juki 2200 QVP Mini, those 3 machines are very similar. Of course, there's those new features on the 18 that I shared with you in this video, but I feel like if you already own those other 2 machines, I feel like those are plenty good enough for bag making. However, if you've been eyeing a Juki sewing machine, I think this is a really great option. So there's links in the description for where you can find this TL18QVP sewing machine in case you're interested in more information on that, or if you'd like to watch my previous video talking about those other 2 Juki sewing machines that I owned, the TL2010Q or the 2200 QVP Mini, you can find both of those links in the description. All right, I hope you enjoyed that review of the new Juki TL18QVP we had a lot of questions coming in during the video about the machine, so I wanted to get to as many of those questions as I possibly can. It was it was very difficult to keep up with the questions and catch all of them. So
yeah, a quick stat line that I think 22,000 comments so far.
Oh my God.
There's I think 1,600 watching on YouTube, 1,000 on Facebook, 600 likes on YouTube, and I want to say 500 likes on Facebook. So everyone, thank you for the engagement.
Thank you.
Good luck to everyone tonight as well.
Any questions about the machine that I wasn't able to catch? Some of them I wrote down, so we're gonna try to. There's a lot. We probably don't have time to post all of them, so we'll get as many on as we can. So straight stitch only. Yes, that Juki that I just shared with you is straight stitch only, which is fine because that's what I'm usually, me personally, that's what I'm using for piecing quilts, bag making. Donna wants to know the weight. It's about 40 pounds, so it's relatively heavy. You'd say it's heavy, right?
It's
all metal.
It's all metal. That was a good question, and we'll see later, but it is an all metal.
Kristen says, do you have trouble with your bobbin coming away from the pin when you're winding a bobbin on your Juki? I have to keep my fingernail on the top or it comes loose when I start winding. I haven't had an issue with any of that. I'm not sure if it's a mechanical issue. I don't know if you routinely take your machine in for for a tune-up. But if you haven't taken it in for a while, maybe when you take it in, you can mention that issue that you're having. Every once in a while, I have a tiny. I started having Jukis in 2013, and so every once in a while, there's a little issue. And my sewing technician is fabulous, and he always answers my question. Amy wants to know, how's the speed of the TL18QVP compared to the 2010Q, which is another machine that I also have. I look at those machines as almost identical. Visually, how they sew, the speed, that's all identical. The difference is those 3 extra features that I shared with you in the video and also the additional feet. So there's a lot more feet and accessories that come with the TL18. Nicole says, can this machine sew through many layers easily? Yes, I mean, what I demonstrated in that video is not, I usually don't sew through that many layers when making a bag, but I just wanted to stack all those layers on the machine and show you that if for some reason you needed to, it could handle sewing through that. Jan says, can you get that telescoping part separate? I've not been able to separate those from the machine. They're connected. I'm not sure if it broke, if that could be replaced, but that's a good question. Sadly, I don't know the answer to that. Jamie says, is the 18QVP lighter weight than the 2010? Yeah, I feel like the bodies of those machines is virtually the same, so pretty much the same weight. I'm going to read a couple questions from my sheet while you...
No, that's not okay. No, of course.
Aaron says, oh, nice. Can you
Go
use... Ahead. Let me answer Aaron's question.
No.
He wanted to know.
I'm in control here.
Can it use large spools of thread? Yeah, so my Aurifil threads are the biggest that I normally use. A cone, I don't know if I've ever put a cone on there, but it might be okay. And if not, you could have the separate spool that sits on the tabletop. I'm not sure if you know what I mean. I have one somewhere. I haven't used it in quite some time, but that's another option. All right, I'm going to go through a couple of these questions. So the micro lifter, I noticed a lot of people liked that micro lifter feature. When I was doing some research before the show, the micro lifter is actually a feature that Juki industrial machines have had in the past, and so they added it to this, the TL18. Basically, it prevents uneven sewing, especially if you're dealing with a lot of layers, if you're going from a thicker layer to a thinner layer, which is what most of us would encounter when, say, we're top stitching the top edge of the bag. So the area where the side seams are, that's going to be thicker. But the front and the back of the bag, the middle of that area, is going to be thinner. So using that micro lifter kind of compensates, so you're getting even stitches even when you're going from a thinner area to a thicker area, such as for a seam. Another question, can the machine be used for quilting? Yes, I use it for machine piecing quilts. I have machine quilted a few quilts on it. I generally send quilts to Long Armor, but it can be done, especially that nice table that it comes with. It is very nice to sew with. And on that note, another question about the throat size. The throat size on that machine is 8 inches going across and about 6.5 inches tall. So a really good sized throat, which is when I first got my Juki in 2013, that was the main selling point for me, was a bigger throat size, because if you're making bags, you know, you have to usually wrangle all that bulk of the bag through your throat at least a few times.
You know, so weird when I first heard that term. I'm like, what is she talking about?
I saw a few other questions that I had to write down because they were coming by too fast. Ben Williams wanted to know, does the threader always work? Basically, the only time my automatic threader doesn't work is when I don't have that needle in the very top position. So if I notice it's not threading, then I just go ahead and crank that needle up a little higher, and then it'll work. A question about the hinge zipper foot that I showed in the demonstration. I'm not sure if they have a similar product available for other sewing machines. The hinge zipper foot that I got is actually an authentic Juki foot. How I store my feet, you're gonna laugh. So I have a plastic container for the feet that I use once in a blue moon, but the feet that I use all the time, I have this little cup where I keep my Wonder Clips in, and the feet, I showed you that hinge zipper foot and the Teflon foot, I just keep them in here. I know that's super irresponsible of me, but I just like to have
Convenience.
them with an easy grasp, so I can just go ahead and grab them and change them out really quick. So I take great care of my Wonder Clip cup to make sure my feet are always, so I know where they are.
Did you get all your questions?
Those were all my questions.
All right. Glad we wrapped your questions up.
Dawn wanted to know, is that a metal bobbin? Yes, the Juki takes metal bobbins. I tried to use generic feet in the past, generic bobbins in the past, and they just look different. They look cheaper, and they didn't work as well. So I just usually buy the authentic Juki metal bobbins. Tiara says, this Juki needed oil. So in the manual, it says to oil, and that's one thing I didn't show in the demonstration video. If you're interested in the oiling, I believe I did show the oiling in my video when I did for the other two Jukis that I have, which I have the link to that video in the description. But I think it says for oiling, if you're using the machine every day, I think it said to oil every day, but I am not finding that quickly in the manual. So you'll want to check your manual. Oh, right here. Lubricating the machine. Lubricate the machine once a day if you use it every day. Okay, there's some other notes about that, but that basically that answers your question.
Always refer to the manual for your own sewing machine.
Right.
Don't assume your computerized machine also needs oiling, because we've learned it may not. So definitely consult your manual first. If you don't have a manual, go online, Google, hit your model number in, hit manual in the title. I'm sure I'll go to the manufacturer and get you a PDF version of your manual.
So I used to oil every day. And a few years ago when I took the machine in for a tune-up, which is good to do every year and a half, the sewing machine technician said I was oiling too often. He said, maybe pull it back to 2 or 3 times a week. That's just for me, because he was seeing oil residue on the machine, a little bit of leakage, so that meant I was oiling it too much. So that's what it says in the manual. Also, it's helpful to refer to advice from your sewing machine technician, a professional, yes. All right.
Did you do that?
Oh, sorry.
Throw me off, Sarah.
Sarah wants to know, what does lifting the thread up like that do? I'm not sure. My brain is just going so quickly. I'm not sure what that's in reference to.
Maybe when you were threading your machine. Lifting it up above this. That's the only time you were lifting
Maybe
thread.
Feel free to email me after the show just so I can get it right. My email is sarah@sewsweetness.com, and that's Sarah with no H. And you can always email me anytime. Happy to answer emails and help if you have any questions. How different is this machine from yours? Just about the same. Like I mentioned, the main difference is those 3 new features, including the micro lifter.
The micro lifter is probably the big deal.
That's the big deal. And all of the extra feet that machine comes with. You might not need all those feet. I can't remember if I mentioned in that video demonstration or not. If you already have a Juki TL18QVP or the 2200 QVP Mini, I don't feel it's necessary to purchase another machine. I would just suggest purchasing extra feet if you need them, or what have you, or the plate for thick fabric. I highly recommend that. The plate that comes with the machine is a smaller hole. Since this is a straight stitch machine, it doesn't have like a big area for the needle to go back and forth in. Invest in that plate for thick fabric. They have it at so many things. You can find it on their site. I think when I checked yesterday, it was about $35. Replace that plate if you have a Juki with the plate for thick fabric, and just leave it on there. It's okay to piece fabric with it, but it really helps for sewing thick layers so that your needle goes down in the hole instead of kind of twisting to the side and hitting your plate and breaking. Robin says, is the machine plastic or metal? It's all metal. Just that side area where it's blue, that's plastic, but everything else is metal. Quilting in Romania wants to know, will this machine handle making any of your patterns? Yes, I've had the machine since 2013, and there's not a bag, at least any of my patterns, that I've not been able to sew on it. And actually, in fact, I find it helpful to have this home sewing machine rather than an industrial machine, because then I feel like I can keep my designs realistic. I feel like if I had an industrial machine, I might attempt more ambitious designs that maybe your regular home sewing machine wouldn't be able to tackle. Debbie says, is the manual included as a paper copy? Yes, they do have the paper copy included with the sewing machine. Audrey says, I don't really understand what the micro lifter is doing. So the micro lifter, according to the manual, I had it notated.
I saw a quick video. There's a pressure that keeps your foot down, and so when you're getting thick layers, instead of increasing the pressure or reducing the pressure, it makes it loose. So it lets you keep the same pressure while letting it adjust up a certain amount. It's got a little dial on top of it. It lets you adjust how much you want it to move up and down while keeping that even pressure.
Yeah, it says it adjusts up to approximately 2 millimeters. So there's some wiggle room for getting
As you
those.
saw, Sarah had 8 layers, and that's 4 layers of foam. So it's
right, and it also keeps the variance when you move down to the thinner layers,
Yep.
like I showed in that demonstration video at the end.
Seams, like exiting
2 or
the seam
3.
and stuff like that.
Yep.
Would be practical application.
Let's see.
Can you quilt on it, Sarah?
Yes, actually, I'm going to be making that quilt on it. I probably won't machine quilt it myself, but it definitely can handle it. And as you saw, it had all those
Free motion
feet for quilting, the 3 free motion feet and the walking foot. Can it flat fell the seams on jeans? I found that always bogs down my machine. Yeah, I was actually thinking about jeans when I was talking about that micro lifter. The seams on jeans are one of those areas where there's definitely a variance in thickness when you're going from the seam just to the straight.
I saw a
one
video
layer.
and a guy was demonstrating, and he went through 4 layers of denim with this machine while demonstrating that
Micro lifter.
micro lifter.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe we'll choose 3 more questions and then we'll get over to the giveaway.
Sure.
Jesse says, is this your new machine, Sarah? I think because my other 2 machines are long overdue for some maintenance, like I mentioned, it's important to do the maintenance rather than going in when there's something really, really wrong with your machine, because the technician, in my personal experience, was able to catch some issues before it turned into big issues. So I'm going to take the other 2 machines in for maintenance. I think I asked my mom if she would want one of my 2 older machines, and then I'll keep this newer one so I can keep using it. And I always like to have a backup because we're constantly filming things, working on new projects, and if one of my machines went out and I needed to wait for it to come back, it would kind of set us back. So David Alice wants to know, do you sell additional Juki feet? You can find, I have a link in the description to So Many Things, which is the website that I got this Juki from. They have tons of accessories for Juki, the plate for thick fabric, all the different feet, the hinge zipper foot. You can find that link and go to their website. You can type in the name of the foot you're looking in the search box, or if you want to give Tim a call at So Many Things, he can help you out if there's something you don't see.
Super duper nice guy.
Yes, his name is Tim. Fantastic to work with. Extremely nice and super knowledgeable. He's been doing this for a lot of years and he knows his machines. I've actually met him in person a few years ago. I taught at a retreat hosted by Vanessa from the Crafty Gemini. I'm sure many of you watch Vanessa's videos, and so I met Tim at one of Vanessa's retreats. This was a few years ago, but yeah, he's a true expert, a true sewing machine expert.